The alarm screamed through the cargo ship's bridge at 3 in the morning. Captain Ji-ho Kim jerked awake in his chair, coffee spilling across his uniform. His hands moved to the controls before his eyes fully opened. 20 years of flying through space had trained his body to react faster than his mind. "What is it?" he called out to the empty bridge. The ship's computer answered in its flat, emotionless voice. "Distress beacon detected. Origin unknown. Distance 40,000 kilometers." Ji-ho rubbed his eyes and stared at the screen. A weak signal pulsed on the display, barely visible against the background noise of space. His ship, the Eternal Spring, was a simple cargo hauler. They carried food and supplies to the frontier colonies. Nothing exciting. They were 3 days from their destination and already behind schedule. He should ignore it. Protocol said to report unknown signals and keep moving. Let the military handle it. But Ji-ho had never been good at following protocol when someone might be in trouble. "Change course," he said. "Take us to that beacon." The computer beeped its acknowledgement. Ji-ho pressed the button to wake his crew. Within minutes, his small team gathered on the bridge. Mireille Park, the ship's scientist, arrived first. She was young, barely 30, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "A distress call?" she asked, already pulling up data on her tablet. "Unknown origin," Ji-ho confirmed. "Could be pirates. Could be debris. Could be someone who needs help. Could get us killed," added Taemin, the ship's engineer. But he was already checking the weapon systems just in case. The Eternal Spring wasn't built for rescue missions. It was slow, old, and equipped with basic sensors. As they approached the signal, Ji-ho felt his stomach tighten. The ship that appeared on their screens was massive, easily 50 times their size. "But it was dying, my God," Mireille whispered. "It's an arc ship." The vessel drifted in space like a broken giant. Its hull was scarred with damage, hull breaches visible even from a distance. Parts of it still glowed with emergency lighting, but most was dark. Ji-ho had never seen a ship like it before. "What species?" he asked. Mireille's fingers flew across her tablet. "I'm not sure. Let me check the database." A long pause. "Captain, I don't think they're in any database. This isn't any species we know. That made it worse. First contact protocol said to call for backup, quarantine, careful procedures. But that ship was dying." Ji-ho could see it in the way it listed in space, in the way its energy readings flickered. "Hail them," he ordered. Static filled the bridge. Then a voice, weak and broken by interference, spoke in a language Ji-ho didn't understand. The computer worked to translate, matching sounds to known patterns, building a bridge between species. "Please, life support failing, children dying. Please help." Ji-ho's hand was already on the communication panel. "This is Captain Ji-ho Kim of the Terran vessel Eternal Spring. We're here to help. How many are on board?" The translation took a moment. Then the answer came back, and it made Ji-ho's blood run cold. 50,000 souls. We are all that remains." Mireille grabbed his arm. "Captain, we can't handle 50,000 people. We don't have the supplies, the space, the equipment. We need to call for help." "Then call," Ji-ho said. "But we're not leaving until help arrives." The next 6 hours were chaos. Ji-ho sent emergency messages to every Terran station within range. Mireille established communication with the alien ship and learned their story. They were the Kelth, and their sun had exploded. They had escaped in their last arc ship, but barely. For 4 months they had drifted through space, their systems failing one by one. They had sent distress calls to every species they encountered. No one had answered. No one had helped. Until now, the first Terran rescue ship arrived 8 hours later. Then another. Then 10 more. Ji-ho watched in amazement as his simple distress call triggered a response he never expected. The Terran Federation mobilized like he had never seen before. Military vessels, medical ships, engineering teams, supply haulers. They all came. Ambassador Hyun Choi arrived on the flagship and immediately took command. She was a small woman with iron in her spine, the kind of person who could stare down a war fleet without blinking. She stood on the bridge of her ship and coordinated the rescue with brutal efficiency. Ji-ho's little cargo ship became a staging point. Engineers used the Eternal Spring as a platform to access the Kelth Arc. Mireille worked with the Kelth directly, learning their biology, their needs, their language. Within 48 hours, the immediate crisis was stabilized. Life support was restored. Food was distributed. Medical teams treated the sick and injured. Ji-ho finally met Elder Vothis on the 3rd day. The Kelth leader was old, their body failing from the stress of the journey. They had 3 arms, gray skin that seemed to shimmer in the light and eyes that held infinite sadness. Vothis moved slowly, supported by younger Kelth who looked at Jiho with expressions he couldn't quite read. Through translators, Vothis spoke. You came. Others passed us by, but you came. Of course we came, Jiho said. He didn't know what else to say. How do you explain that you couldn't just leave people to die? We have nothing to give you, Vothis continued. Our world is gone. Our technology is broken. We are refugees with empty hands. We're not asking for anything, Jiho replied. Vothis stared at him for a long moment. Why? It was Ambassador Hyun who answered. She had joined them on the Kelth ship, walking through corridors filled with people who had been hours from death just days ago. Because that's what friends do, she said simply. And we'd like to be friends if you'll have us. Over the next weeks, Jiho watched humanity do something he had never quite seen before. The Terran Federation offered the Kelth an entire planet. New Kelthera, they called it. A beautiful world on the edge of Terran space, suitable for Kelth biology, empty and waiting. Engineers repaired the Ark ship enough to make one final journey. Military escorts guarded them every kilometer of the way. Other alien species watched with confusion. The Vrex Dominion sent a formal inquiry, asking what humanity expected in return. The Hevani Trade Consortium offered to buy the rights to New Kelthera, assuming humanity planned to sell it. The Galactic Council requested clarification on this unprecedented transfer of resources. Ambassador Hyun answered them all the same way. We expect nothing. We gain friends they didn't understand. Jiho could see it in their responses, in the way they analyzed the situation looking for hidden advantage, secret weapons, strategic positioning. They couldn't conceive of helping someone simply because it was right. On the day the Kelth Ark ship departed for New Kelthera, Elder Vothis asked to speak with Jiho one final time. The old Kelth leader was weaker now, their body finally giving in to the months of stress. But their eyes were clear. My people will remember this, Vothis said, their three-fingered hand gripping Jiho's with surprising strength. We will remember until the stars grow cold. We have nothing now, but one day perhaps we will have something to give. And when that day comes, we will not forget. Jiho smiled. Just be good neighbors. That's all we ask. No, Vothis said firmly. You ask nothing, but we promise everything. Humanity saved us when we were strangers. We will stand with humanity when you need friends. This I swear, and my people will swear, and their children will swear. Memory is all we have left, but memory can be stronger than steel. Jiho didn't know what to say to that. He simply nodded and wished them well. As the Eternal Spring returned to its regular cargo route, Mirai sat beside him on the bridge. They watched the Kelth Ark ship disappear toward its new home, surrounded by Terran escorts. Do you think they'll be okay? She asked. I think they'll do fine, Jiho replied. They're survivors. The other species think we're crazy, Mirai said. Giving away an entire planet, spending all those resources for nothing in return. Jiho shrugged. Maybe we are crazy, but I'd rather be crazy and help people than be sane and watch them die. Neither of them knew then how important those words would become. Neither of them could imagine that a century later the Kelth would remember. That memory would move mountains, shift politics, and quite literally move planets. But for now, Jiho simply steered his ship back on course and returned to the simple work of hauling cargo through space. He had done what felt right. That was enough. 100 years passed quietly. History books recorded the rescue of the Kelth as a footnote, a minor event in humanity's expansion across the stars. The galaxy moved on to bigger stories, greater conflicts, more important matters. But on New Kelthera and throughout human space, something grew in the silence. Something the history books missed entirely. Yuna Song was 10 years old when she first visited New Kelthera with her parents. Her mother worked for the Terran Diplomatic Corps, traveling between worlds to maintain relationships and solve problems. New Kelthera was supposed to be just another stop on a long tour. Yuna remembered stepping off the shuttle and seeing Kelth children playing in a park. They looked different from humans with their 3 arms and gray shimmering skin, but they played the same games. Tag, hide and seek. They laughed the same way. One Kelth child, a girl about Yuna's age, noticed her staring and waved. Want to play? She called in perfect Korean, learned from human teachers. Yuna's mother smiled and nodded permission. Within minutes, Yuna was running through the park with Kelth children, playing and laughing, differences forgotten. That evening, the Kelth girl's family invited them for dinner. Yuna ate strange food that tasted surprisingly good, and listened to stories about the old Kelth homeworld, the desperate flight through space, and the day humans arrived to save them. "We teach this to all our children," the girl's father explained. "The story of arrival. Every Kelth child knows it by heart. We must never forget." Yuna's mother looked uncomfortable. "You don't owe us anything," she said gently. "That was a long time ago." The Kelth father shook his head. "It was yesterday in our memory. And it is not about owing. It is about remembering who helped us when we had nothing." 20 years later, Yuna became the official human liaison to New Kelthara. She lived on the Kelth homeworld, working to maintain the relationship between their peoples. But she quickly realized her job was almost unnecessary. The relationship maintained itself. She watched human merchants stop at New Kelthara even when it added days to their journey. The planet's location wasn't convenient for trade routes, and the Kelth economy was still small. But the merchants came anyway, bringing goods and taking Kelth products back to human worlds. When Yuna asked one merchant why he bothered, he scratched his head and shrugged. "My grandfather flew escort for the Ark ship," the merchant said. "He always talked about the Kelth, said they were good people. Figured I'd see for myself." He paused. "Plus they make really good tea, and they're honest in business. That's rare enough to be worth the trip." Yuna noticed Kelth students at every major Terran university. They studied engineering, medicine, art, history. The Terran Federation had established automatic scholarships for any Kelth who wanted to learn. Yuna checked the records and found the scholarship program had existed for 90 years. It had never been canceled, never been reduced even during economic hardships. It just continued year after year, quietly helping Kelth students pursue their dreams. She met a Kelth woman named Sarah, who had graduated from a Terran medical school 30 years ago. Sarah now ran the largest hospital on New Kelthara, combining Kelth and human medical knowledge. "The scholarship saved my life," Sarah told Yuna over coffee. "My family had nothing. We were farmers, barely making enough to survive. But the scholarship asked no questions. It just helped. So I studied and I came back and now I help my people." She smiled. "And sometimes I help humans too. We have a small clinic near the spaceport. Any human ship that needs medical help can stop here. Free of charge." "You don't have to do that," Yuna said. Sarah's smile widened. "We know. That's why we do it." Yuna documented these stories in her reports. Small interactions, tiny moments of kindness exchanged. Individually, they meant little. Together, they formed a pattern. She learned about the patrol fleet incident from Admiral records. 5 years ago, pirates had attacked a Kelth merchant convoy. The attack happened in neutral space, far from any Terran patrol route. But somehow 3 human warships arrived within 4 hours. They destroyed the pirate vessels and escorted the Kelth convoy to safety. When the Kelth offered payment, the human admiral refused. "You're friends," the admiral had said simply. "We look out for friends." Yuna found that human patrol routes had been quietly adjusted over the decades. They weren't officially protecting Kelth space, but they always seemed to be nearby when trouble appeared. She cross-referenced incident reports and found the pattern repeated dozens of times. Pirates learned to avoid Kelth ships because human warships would appear like angry ghosts. Deho Lim was another piece of the puzzle. He was a human merchant who had built the first large trading company focused on Kelth goods. When Yuna interviewed him for her reports, she expected to hear about profit margins and market opportunities. Instead, Deho talked about his grandmother. She was an engineer on one of the rescue ships, Deho explained. They sat in his office on New Kelthara, surrounded by samples of Kelth textiles and crafts. "She told me stories about the rescue when I was little. How desperate the Kelth were. How hard everyone worked to save them. She cried when she told me about the children they saved." "That inspired your business?" Yuna asked. Deho laughed. "I'm not that noble. I started trading with the Kelth because their products are unique and sell well in human markets. But I came here in the first place because of grandmother's stories. She said the Kelth were worth knowing." She was right. He showed Yuna around his warehouses. Kelth textiles that shimmered with natural light. Kelth ceramics that rang like bells when tapped. Kelth tea that became hugely popular on human worlds. Kelth art that commanded high prices from human collectors. "The Kelth are poor by galactic standards," Deho said. "But they're rich in culture. And they're honest. I've never had a Kelth partner cheat me. Ever. They keep their word even when it costs them money. In this business, that's priceless." The most surprising thing Una discovered was the Archive of Gratitude. Counselor Thren, an old Kelth historian, maintained it personally. It was housed in a massive building in New Kelthera's capital city, and it was growing. Thren showed Una through endless halls of records. Every interaction between humans and Kelth was documented here. Trade agreements, student exchanges, medical cooperations, diplomatic visits, even personal friendships. The archive recorded it all. Why? Una asked, overwhelmed by the scale. Thren's old eyes sparkled. Because memory matters. Other species forget. They make friends when it's convenient and abandon them when it's not. But we were saved by people who gained nothing from saving us. We will not forget that. Ever. But it's been 100 years, Una protested. Most of the people who rescued you are dead now. Yes, Thren agreed. But their children live. And their children's children. And humanity continues to be what it was then. Good. Kind. Reliable. He gestured at the vast archive. One day humanity will need friends. The galaxy is not kind to the good. When that day comes, we will be ready. Una thought he was being overly dramatic. Humanity was strong now, a major galactic power. They didn't need protection from a small species like the Kelth. But she included Thren's words in her report anyway. She also documented the cultural blending. Young Kelth spoke Korean or English as easily as their native language. They listened to human music, watched human entertainment, adopted human fashion. But it went both ways. Humans on New Kelthera learned Kelth customs, ate Kelth food, celebrated Kelth holidays. Mixed families were becoming common. Not human Kelth couples, biology didn't allow that, but adopted families, chosen families. Una met a human woman named Somin, who had adopted 3 Kelth children orphaned by disease. She met a Kelth man raising 2 human children whose parents died in a shuttle accident. Neither case was unusual. Both species helped each other's children without hesitation. We're family now, Somin told her simply. That's just how it is. In the galactic news, the Kelth barely rated a mention. They were too small, too peaceful, too boring. Major powers like the Virex Dominion or the Havani Consortium dominated the headlines. Humanity's expansion continued. New colonies, new trade routes, new conflicts and alliances. But in the quiet spaces between headlines, the friendship deepened. Human ships always stopped at New Kelthera. Kelth students always found welcome at Terran schools. When either species faced trouble, the other helped. Not because of treaties or contracts, simply because that's what friends did. Una completed her tour as liaison after 30 years. She had grown old on New Kelthera, raised her own children there, married a human teacher who loved the Kelth as much as she did. When she retired, they asked her to summarize her decades of observation in one report. She thought about it for weeks. Then she wrote simply, "The relationship between humanity and the Kelth is the most stable, genuine friendship in known space. It persists not through formal agreements, but through mutual respect and genuine affection. Both species have integrated the other into their cultural identity. They are, in every way that matters, family." Her supervisors filed the report and moved on to more pressing matters. Una didn't mind. She knew the truth. The relationship didn't need official recognition or grand gestures. It existed in 1,000 small moments every day. Human merchants stopping to trade. Kelth students studying on human worlds. The explosion tore through the Galactic Council station at dawn. 7,000 people died in the first 30 seconds. Station hull breached. Atmosphere vented into space. Entire sections of the massive diplomatic platform simply ceased to exist, reduced to debris and frozen bodies. Captain Soyeon Han was in the security office when it happened. The blast threw her across the room. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights flickered. She pulled herself up, ears ringing, and stared at the screens showing camera feeds from across the station. Hell. She was watching hell. "Get rescue teams moving," she shouted at her staff. But half her staff was dead and the other half was in shock. Soyeon grabbed the communication panel herself. "All units, this is Han. We have multiple hull breaches. Activate emergency protocols. Move, people, move!" The next 12 hours were chaos. Rescue workers pulled survivors from wreckage. Medical teams were overwhelmed. Engineers sealed breaches to prevent further decompression. Death toll climbed. 7,000. 8,000. 9,000. Soyeon worked until she collapsed from exhaustion. When she woke in the temporary medical station, An investigation team was already working. They had answers. Fast answers. Too fast, her instincts screamed. The bombs had been placed in 3 critical locations. The explosives were Terran military grade. The detonation codes matched Terran security protocols, and security footage showed a human technician accessing each bomb location in the hours before the explosion. The evidence was perfect. Too perfect. Soyeon tried to raise concerns, but she was a junior captain in station security. No one listened. The investigation team was led by VREX officers, members of the VREX Dominion's elite intelligence service. They were efficient, professional, and absolutely certain. The evidence is clear, Commander Zurval announced at the Emergency Galactic Council session. He was tall, imposing, with scales that gleamed under the station lights. His voice carried authority that silenced objections. Humanity perpetrated this terrorist attack. 7,000 innocent people murdered by Terran agents. Ambassador Taewon Shin stood to defend humanity. He was an old man, decades of diplomatic service making his words carry weight, but his voice shook with shock and grief. This is impossible. Humanity would never commit such an atrocity. We must investigate further, verify the evidence. The evidence has been verified, Zurval said coldly. Multiple independent teams confirm it. Terran explosives, Terran protocols, a Terran agent. The VREX Dominion moves for immediate sanctions against the Terran Federation, pending full investigation and reparations. The vote was swift and brutal. 43 species voted for sanctions. Only 5 voted against. Humanity's allies melted away like morning frost. Species that had signed treaties with the Terran Federation suddenly remembered other commitments. Trade partners discovered reasons to break contracts. Friends became strangers overnight. Ambassador Taewon watched his life's work collapse in hours. He sent desperate messages to the Terran government, requested time, begged for patience, but the galaxy's mind was made up. President Minho Bayek received the news in his office on Earth. He was a young president, only 50, elected on promises of peaceful expansion and cooperation. He had believed the galaxy would respect those ideals. Now he stared at reports of sanctions, broken treaties, and outright hostility. How bad is it? He asked his advisors. Finance Minister Kwan laid out the reality. The sanctions will cripple our economy within months. We'll lose access to key resources, trade routes, and markets. Unemployment will skyrocket. Food shortages on outer colonies. Our currency will collapse, and the alternative? Minho asked quietly. Accept VREX oversight, Kwan said. Submit to their investigation team. Give them access to our military, our government, our intelligence services. Essentially surrender our sovereignty. And if we refuse everything? Defense Minister Ara answered that one. She was a former admiral, hard as steel. War. The VREX won't invade immediately. They'll blockade our space, starve our colonies, wait for us to collapse from within. If we resist militarily, they'll frame it as aggression and get council approval for a full assault. Can we win a war against the VREX? Minho asked. Ara's silence was answer enough. Finally, she said, no, sir. Not alone. The VREX Dominion is 3 times our size, with centuries more experience. Their allies would join them. We'd lose. Minho looked at Admiral Ji-won Kang, who had been quiet throughout the meeting. She commanded the 3rd Fleet, the largest human military force. Admiral? Your assessment? Ji-won stood. She was younger than most admirals, promoted for brilliance rather than seniority. The VREX have been planning this for years, Mr. President. This wasn't opportunistic. They framed us deliberately perfectly. Someone spent a lot of time learning our protocols, our explosives, even our personnel rotations. This was a setup from the beginning. Can you prove it? Minho asked desperately. No, sir. Not with what we have. They're too good. Captain Soyeon was already trying. She had copies of the security footage and something bothered her. The human technician in the video moved wrong. Small things, weight distribution, posture, the way they carried tools. She had worked station security for 10 years. She knew how Terran technicians moved. This person was wrong. She started digging deeper, pulling more footage, cross-referencing personnel files. 3 days into her investigation, someone tried to kill her. The assassin came at night. Soyeon only survived because she was paranoid enough to sleep in her office instead of her quarters. She heard them coming, grabbed her weapon, and ran. Through the station corridors, down maintenance shafts, into the lower decks where refugees from the explosion still sheltered. She hid among them for 2 days, working on her tablet, following digital trails. She found it. Evidence that the technician in the footage wasn't human at all, but a Vrex agent in disguise. Proof that the explosives had been modified from Terran supplies stolen years ago. Communications between Vrex intelligence and the assassination team. But she was trapped on the station with killers hunting her, and every official authority was controlled by the Vrex or their allies. She sent encrypted messages to Terran intelligence, but they might take weeks to arrive and longer to verify. She needed to escape. But how? Back on Earth, President Minho addressed the Terran Federation. The broadcast went to every human world, every station, every ship. His face was grim. "My fellow humans," he began, "we face the greatest crisis in our history. The galaxy accuses us of mass murder. They demand we surrender our freedom or face economic collapse and war. I want you to know the truth. We are innocent. But evidence against us is overwhelming, and we cannot yet prove our innocence." He paused, gathering strength. "I have consulted with our best minds. Our military cannot win a war against the Vrex Dominion and their allies. Our economy cannot survive the sanctions. We face a choice between submission and destruction." The Federation held its breath. "I choose neither," Minho said firmly. "We will not submit to injustice. We will not surrender our freedom. But we will not start a war we cannot win. Instead, we will endure. We will investigate. We will find the truth and prove it to the galaxy. Until then, we stand firm." It was a brave speech. But brave speeches didn't stop economic collapse. Within weeks, outer colonies started struggling. Supply lines were cut. Prices for basic goods skyrocketed. Human merchants were turned away from ports across the galaxy. Human diplomats were expelled from neutral stations. Admiral Jiwan prepared her fleet for the worst. She couldn't win a war, but she could make the Vrex pay dearly for starting one. Her crews trained. Ships were armed. Defense positions were fortified around key worlds. But it felt like waiting for an avalanche. You could prepare, but you couldn't stop it. Ambassador Taewon sat in his office on the council station, now repaired but empty of human allies. He had spent 40 years building relationships across the galaxy. 40 years of careful diplomacy, of making friends, of proving humanity's good intentions. Gone in one explosion. He wrote a message to President Minho. "We are alone. I'm sorry. I failed." The next morning, Taewon received an unexpected communication. It came through old channels, barely used diplomatic lines established decades ago. The message was simple, 3 words in Korean. "We remember. Mobilizing." It was from New Kelthera. Taewon stared at the message. The Kelth? What could they possibly do? They were small, weak, and irrelevant in galactic politics. They had no military, no economic power, no leverage. He almost deleted the message as a kind but useless gesture, but something made him forward it to Earth instead. President Minho needed any hope he could get, even false hope. On New Kelthera, Elder Vessa stood before the Kelth Council. She was the granddaughter of Elder Vothis, the leader who had first encountered humans a century ago. She had grown up hearing stories of the rescue, of humanity's kindness when the Kelth had nothing. "Our friends are in trouble," she said simply. "The galaxy has turned against them. They face lies and betrayal. They stand alone." The council was silent. Everyone knew what alone meant. It meant what the Kelth had faced when their sun exploded. It meant desperation and death approaching. "We owe them," one counselor said. "But what can we do? We have nothing to offer. No military, no wealth, no power." Elder Vessa smiled. It was not a kind smile. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Within hours of Elder Vessa's broadcast, responses started flooding in. Not from major powers or military forces, but from individuals. Merchants, teachers, scientists, students, workers. People who had met the Kelth over the past century and remembered their kindness. People who had dealt with humans and found them honest. People who valued friendship over politics. Director Hana Yu sat in Terran Intelligence headquarters and watched her screens light up with information. She had been trying to prove humanity's innocence for weeks with no success. Now data was appearing in her systems from sources she didn't even know existed. Kelth merchants sent her shipping records showing Vrex agents purchasing Terran explosives through black market channels 3 years ago. A Kelth student at a Vrex university sent her communications between Vrex intelligence officers discussing the plan. A Kelth teacher on a neutral world sent her financial records showing payment to the assassins who tried to kill Captain Soyon. Where is this all coming from? Hana's assistant asked, stunned. The Kelth, Hana whispered. They've been watching, listening, recording for 100 years. More messages arrived. A small species called the Bendari, who humanity had helped with a medical crisis 20 years ago, announced they believed humanity was innocent. Their evidence? Humans don't lie about big things. They're too honest for their own good. A merchant consortium from the Outer Rim, barely known to major powers, declared they had worked with human traders for decades. We've never been cheated by a human, not once. They keep their word even when it costs them money. These are not the actions of terrorists. A scientific community from 6 different species issued a statement. Many of them had worked with human researchers at conferences the Kelth organized. We have seen humanity's character in collaboration. They share knowledge freely. They credit others' work honestly. They celebrate other species' achievements. This is not a culture that commits genocide. Each statement was small. Each source was minor, but they kept coming. Dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of voices speaking up for humanity. Species the Terran Federation barely knew existed, all coming forward with their experiences. The Vrex Dominion tried to dismiss it as irrelevant. These are minor species and individuals, Commander Zurval announced. Their opinions don't matter, but Elder Vesa appeared before the Galactic Council. She was old and small, barely reaching Zurval's chest, but her voice cut through the chamber like a blade. You say we don't matter, she said. You say small species have no voice. This is why you didn't expect us. You forgot that the galaxy has billions of small voices and together they become thunder. She presented evidence the Kelth network had gathered. Communication intercepts showing Vrex agents discussing the false flag operation. Financial records proving the Vrex funded the bombing. Security analysis showing the human technician in the footage was a Vrex agent using advanced disguise technology. Zurval tried to object. This evidence is fabricated. The Kelth are known allies of humanity. Of course they lie for them. We have never lied, Vesa said quietly. Not in 100 years of galactic contact. Check your records. The Kelth have never broken a promise, never falsified a report, never deceived anyone. We are honest because humanity taught us that honesty matters. She paused. You expect us to lie now because that is what you would do for your allies. But we are not you. The council chamber was silent. Humanity saved us when we had nothing to offer, Vesa continued. They asked for no payment. They expected no reward. They simply helped because it was right. Now you accuse them of murder, and the evidence is too convenient, too perfect. We have investigated, and we present the truth. Humanity is innocent. The Vrex are guilty. This is outrageous, Zurval shouted. Prove us wrong, Vesa challenged. Open investigation. Independent teams. Full transparency. If humanity is guilty, evidence will prove it. If the Vrex are guilty, evidence will prove that too. Unless you're afraid of what real investigation will find. Meanwhile, Captain Kyung-Min Lee was patrolling near Kelth space when she received an encrypted message from a Kelth freighter. Her ship, the Memorial, was a small patrol vessel, barely armed. But she responded to the message because it came from friends. We found one of your people, the Kelth captain told her. She says she has evidence, but Vrex agents are hunting her. Where is she? Kyung-Min asked immediately. On this ship. We smuggled her off the council station. She's injured but alive. It was Captain Soyon. The Kelth had found her hiding in the refugee sections, recognized her as human and in trouble, and smuggled her aboard their freighter using the same merchant networks they'd built over decades. Vrex agents never thought to check Kelth ships. Why would they? The Kelth were irrelevant. Kyung-Min brought Soyon back to Terran space. The intelligence officer was exhausted, injured, but alive. And she had evidence. Director Hana combined Soyon's information with everything the Kelth network provided. Together it painted a complete picture. The Vrex had planned the attack for years. They had infiltrated Terran facilities, stolen explosives, created false identities, and executed the bombing with precision. All to frame humanity and force them into submission. But proving it to the galaxy was harder than finding it. The Vrex controlled the official investigation. They controlled the narrative. They controlled the council's information flow. That's when the Kelth did something even more unexpected. Elder Vesa called a press conference, not through official council channels that the Vrex could block, but through every independent news network in the galaxy. Thousands of journalists from hundreds of species attended, curious about what the usually quiet Kelth had to say. Vesa told a story. She started with the day humanity found them dying in space. She described the rescue in detail, making it personal. The human captain who risked his ship to help strangers. The engineer who worked 48 hours straight repairing their life support. The ambassador who offered them a world without asking for anything in return. Then she told stories from the 100 years since. Small stories, personal stories. The human merchant who saved her profits to help a Kelth family buy medicine. The Terran student who spent his vacation teaching Kelth children mathematics. The human patrol fleet that arrived to protect Kelth traders from pirates. Hundreds of small kindnesses that accumulated over a century. This is humanity's character, Vesa said to the cameras, not the crime they're accused of. I have met thousands of humans in my lifetime. I have never met a dishonest one. I have never met a cruel one. I have never met one who would murder innocents for political gain. She paused, letting that sink in. The Vrex accuse humanity of terrorism. But I accuse the Vrex of something worse. I accuse them of betraying the very concept of truth. They murdered thousands and blamed their victims. They destroyed honor itself. Then she presented the evidence, all of it, on live broadcast across the galaxy. Communications showing Vrex planning, financial records proving Vrex funding, technical analysis revealing the disguised agent, testimony from dozens of witnesses the Kelth network had found. It was undeniable, overwhelming, and broadcast to billions of viewers before the Vrex could stop it. The galaxy erupted. Species that had supported the sanctions began questioning them. News networks that had presented the Vrex evidence as fact started investigating deeper. Independent fact-checkers verified the Kelth evidence and found it solid. Even species allied with the Vrex started demanding answers. But the most powerful moment came from an unexpected source. A Vrex junior officer, disgusted by her superior's actions, defected. She contacted the Kelth directly, knowing they could be trusted, and provided internal Vrex documents confirming everything. I joined the Vrex military to protect people, she said in her defection statement, not to murder them and frame innocents. Commander Zurval and his faction have betrayed everything we should stand for. The Vrex Dominion fractured. Many Vrex citizens were horrified by what their government had done. Protests erupted on Vrex worlds. Military officers resigned. The Vrex Council itself split, with reformers demanding Zurval's arrest. Admiral Jiwan watched from her flagship as the situation transformed. Just weeks ago, humanity had stood alone. Now species were apologizing for believing the lies. Trade partners were returning. Diplomatic contacts were reopening. But it was more than just vindication. Something bigger was happening. 40 different species issued statements standing with humanity, not because of treaties or political advantage, but because they believed in justice. Many were small species who had met humans through Kelth introductions over the years. Some had their own stories of human kindness. Others simply believed that truth mattered more than power. A coalition formed. Not a formal alliance, but a network of species who decided that friendship meant something. That evidence mattered more than politics. That small voices together could challenge powerful lies. President Minho received messages from dozens of leaders. Many apologized for doubting humanity. Others offered support. Some proposed new relationships based on genuine respect rather than cold calculation. But the most important message came from Elder Vesa. It was private, sent directly to Minho. "We are even now," she wrote. "You saved us when we were strangers." The Galactic Council was in chaos. 3 council members had resigned. 7 more faced recall votes from their home governments. The Vrex delegation was under investigation, with Commander Zurval arrested by his own people. Species were changing sides daily, scrambling to distance themselves from the lie or align themselves with the truth. But High Commander Wrath, who replaced Zurval as Vrex leader, refused to accept defeat gracefully. He was Old Guard Vrex, convinced of his species' right to dominate. If politics had failed, he would use force. "The evidence is fabricated," Wrath declared to what remained of the council. "The Kelth are known human allies. Their testimony is worthless. We reject all charges and demand humanity still face sanctions for destabilizing the galaxy." President Minho Bayek watched the broadcast from Earth. His advisors were celebrating humanity's vindication, but Minho saw the danger. The Vrex military was mobilizing. They had too much invested in this scheme to simply walk away. They're going to attack, he said quietly. Defense Minister Ara agreed. Our intelligence shows Rex fleet movements. They're positioning for a strike. They can't win politically now, so they'll try to win militarily. How many species will stand with us? Minho asked. Admiral Jiwan had been coordinating with the coalition that had formed around humanity. 43 species have pledged support, but most are small. Their combined military strength is maybe a quarter of what the Virex can field. We can make it a costly fight, but we can't win. Minho closed his eyes. After everything, after the truth was revealed and friends stood up, it might still end in war. A war humanity would lose. Then Admiral Jiwan's communication panel chimed. She listened for a moment, her expression changing from concern to confusion to wonder. Sir, she said slowly, the Kelth are requesting an immediate meeting. They say they have a proposal. Elder Vesa arrived at Earth with a delegation of Kelth scientists and engineers. With them was a human named Dongwu Park, an engineer who had been working on New Kelthera for 5 years. Minho met them in the presidential chambers, curious but puzzled. Thank you for seeing us, Vesa said. We have been working on a project. We began it years ago, anticipating that someday humanity might need more than words. We were right. Dongwu stepped forward. He looked exhausted but excited. Mr. President, the Kelth have theoretical physics that's incredibly advanced in specific areas. Gravity manipulation, spatial mechanics, stuff we're still learning. But theory alone isn't enough. You need engineering, power generation, materials science, things humans excel at. What are you talking about? Minho asked. Vesa smiled. We're talking about moving a planet. The room went silent. Not possible, Defense Minister Ara said flatly. It wasn't, Dongwu agreed. But combining Kelth theory with human engineering made it possible. We've built a prototype, it works. We moved one of New Kelthera's moons 3,000 kilometers last month. It took enormous power and precise coordination, but it worked. Why? Minho asked. Why would you develop this technology? Because we knew someday humanity would need friends to stand with them, Vesa said. And we wanted to bring more than words. This technology changes everything. Strategic positions can be altered, resources can be relocated, and politically, it demonstrates that small species together can accomplish what major powers alone cannot. She activated a holographic display. It showed the Galactic Council Station, currently orbiting a neutral world in Vrex-controlled space. We propose moving the Council Station, Vesa said, to relocate it to orbit New Kelthera. Make it a symbol. The place where humanity saved the Kelth becomes the center of galactic politics. The species everyone dismissed as irrelevant becomes the host of the galaxy's government. The Vrex would never agree. Ara objected. We're not asking them to agree, Vesa said calmly. We're simply going to do it. The Council Station is officially neutral territory. It doesn't belong to the Vrex. We'll ask the Council's permission, of course. But we believe they'll see the wisdom in moving to a truly neutral location, away from Vrex influence. Admiral Jiwan was studying the technical data Dongwu provided. This would require coordination between dozens of ships. Massive power generation. Perfect timing. If anything goes wrong, the station could be destroyed. We know, Dongwu said. That's why we need human help. Kelth can provide the theory and some of the equipment, but human engineering and coordination will make it possible. Together we can do this. President Minho looked at the proposal for a long time. It was audacious, crazy, unprecedented. It would fundamentally alter galactic politics and demonstrate that the old powers no longer controlled everything. If we do this, he said slowly, the Vrex will see it as an act of war. They already see us as their enemy, Vesa replied. But if we do this, 43 species will see us as brave, as innovative, as willing to change the galaxy for the better. More species will join us. The Vrex will face a choice. Accept the new reality or fight a war against an ever-growing coalition. And if they choose war? Minho asked. Admiral Jiwan answered. Then we fight. But we fight from a position of strength, with technology that gives us an edge, and with allies who believe in what we stand for. Minho made his decision. Do it. Move the station. The next 3 weeks were chaos of a different kind. Engineers from 2 species worked around the clock. Human power generators were installed on Kelth gravity manipulation platforms. Coordination systems were designed and tested. Hundreds of ships were positioned in precise formation around the Council station. The galaxy watched in confusion at first, then growing amazement as they realized what was happening. Species debated whether it was possible. Scientists said the math worked, but the execution would be impossibly difficult. Politicians argued about the implications. The Virex demanded the project stop immediately. High Commander Wrath called it an act of aggression, but the Council, now relocated to temporary facilities, voted to allow the relocation. The vote was close, but enough species were tired of Rex dominance to approve the move. On the appointed day, the operation began. Captain Kyungmin Lee commanded one of the human coordination ships. Her vessel was positioned with 40 other ships in a precise formation around the massive Council station. Each ship held a piece of the technology required. Like an orchestra where every instrument had to play perfectly, Dongwu Park directed the operation from New Kelthera, working with Kelth scientists in a control center built specifically for this moment. His hands trembled as he activated the systems. "All ships, this is Coordination Central," he broadcast. "Beginning power buildup. Maintain exact positions. Any deviation could destabilize the entire operation." The ships began generating power, enormous amounts of energy, channeled through the Kelth gravity manipulation devices. Space itself seemed to shimmer around the Council station. On the station, thousands of people felt the change. A strange sensation like falling but not falling. The station's artificial gravity compensated, but everyone knew something unprecedented was happening. The move took 6 hours. Slowly, carefully, the massive station was relocated across space, not through normal propulsion but by altering the gravitational fields around it, essentially sliding space itself. The technology was elegant and terrifying. Admiral Jiwan monitored from her flagship. If the Vrex attacked during the operation, humanity and the Kelth would be vulnerable. The ships performing the move couldn't defend themselves, but she had positioned the rest of the coalition fleet as a protective screen. 43 species, thousands of ships ready to defend the operation. The Vrex fleet assembled at the border. High Commander Wrath apparently ordered an attack, but his officers refused. Many had seen the evidence of their government's crimes. Others simply recognized that attacking now would make the Vrex the villains permanently. Wrath was arrested for the second time, this time by his own fleet commanders. The Vrex dominion fractured. Reformers took control, promising investigations and changes. The old guard was swept away, and the Council station successfully relocated to orbit New Kelthera. The symbolism was powerful. The place where humanity saved the Kelth was now the center of galactic politics. The small species everyone dismissed now hosted the government. The technology developed by cooperation now demonstrated what collaboration could achieve. President Minho attended the first council session in the new location. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the chamber, now orbiting a world that represented hope instead of power politics. Elder Vesa addressed the council. 100 years ago, my people were dying. Humanity saved us. They gained nothing from it except our gratitude. Today, humanity faced lies and isolation. We stood with them. We gained nothing from it except the satisfaction of honoring our friends. She paused, looking around the chamber. But that's not quite true. We gained something precious. We gained proof that another way is possible. That relationships built on genuine care are stronger than treaties built on advantage. That small voices together can challenge any power. That character matters more than strength. She gestured to the window, showing New Kelthera below. This world was a gift from humanity. Now it becomes a gift to the galaxy. A neutral place. A symbol of what we can be when we choose friendship over dominance.